Hello, everybody. We are in week 12, and this week we're going to be covering chapter 11, which is theories of personality. Let's skip down to the objectives. Pretty much how you're going to see this chapter set up is by the different theories that we're going to be covering, starting with Freud. Freud, I think, is the name that most people, at least lay people, associate with psychology. He's one of the, founding fathers of the field. So it makes sense to start with his theory. And his theory has had a lot of influence on later ones. But we're going to take a look at the historical view of his theory, as well as currently, what are the neo-Freudians looking at under that umbrella of psychodynamic theory, which is what his theory of personality was called. He was a psychoanalyst, and so he had a lot to contribute in terms of how he felt our personality develops and its resulting effects on our judgment and decision making, as well as any mental illness, or as he would call it, neuroses, that we might develop as a result of unresolved issues, dealing with the stages that he proposes in psychosexual development. So we're going to spend a lot of time, you'll see in the textbook, on the various stages Freud proposed that we develop early on that can then affect our behavior later on. So that's a good deal of the beginning of the chapter. It then goes into Carl Jung, Adler, Horney, and Erikson, who are all neo-Freudians, newer kind of Freud theorists, who also subscribed to psychodynamic theory. But they each had their own sort of twist on it. And you'll kind of see what some of the criticisms were of Freud's work, what held up, what didn't hold up under scrutiny and further analysis and testing of his theory. So definitely have a good handle on some of the differences between these folks. And we've talked about Erikson already. You know him from the developmental chapter where we looked at psychosocial development in all the various ages from infancy all the way up to the elderly. So you're familiar with sort of his thought pattern and his stages. So that will help a little bit in understanding it here. So modern psychoanalytic theory, and then we'll get into a little bit about very differing viewpoints on personality that come from behaviorists and social cognitive theorists, as well as humanists like Carl Rogers, and how he explains personality and how we evolve as people. The last perspective that we're going to look at is trait perspective, and I think this one has gained the most momentum, and this is typically how we see people sort of categorized and analyzed today in terms of their personality. Trait perspective has a lot of proponents and adherents because it has been shown to be a very valid measure of personality, as well as the most objective way we can measure personality. So it gave rise to the MMPI, which is probably the largest, most comprehensive measure of personality that we have. It's used in many different settings and different jobs that you might apply for, might ask you to do an MMPI that has maybe up to 500 questions where you have to answer, and basically categorizes you into 5 main categories of your personality. So we'll be taking a look at that, and it ties into there as well, the big 5. So we'll be looking at 5 main sort of constructs of personality. and everybody falls into those 5 on some end of each of those 5 categories on the spectrum. So for instance, one of the big 5 is introversion or extroversion. Now, a person isn't necessarily either or. They may fall somewhere in between, but it gives you an idea of what that looks like. So that'll be the end of the chapter, discussing that. And then finally, just advantages and disadvantages to measuring personality. What are the tough parts about measuring a person's personality traits? How can we do this best? What tests have been proven to be most reliable and valid? Which ones are a little bit more subjective, and how would they be used? So you'll get a little bit of that. So I hope that helps give you sort of an overview of what the chapter is going to cover. Here are your slides for the week, and you're going to be watching all the videos in from chapter 11 in episode 13 on my Psych Lab. And again, I just want to reiterate to please make sure that you're watching the videos before you're responding to the discussion questions, because they really do help give you a fuller picture of what's going on. And if you are taking this class with me in person, as we would be going through the PowerPoint, we would be watching these videos embedded in the PowerPoint. And in fact, you can kind of see some of the videos are in the PowerPoint. So if you're looking at that PowerPoint in presentation mode, you're going to be able to see those videos, but they're not, all of them are not in there. There's only certain ones. So you really have to be going into my Psych Lab and going into episode 13 to get all of the videos and see all of those. But then you would be ready to do the discussion for the week, which ties in not only chapter 11, but also ties in the Hawk reading. And the Hawk reading is on racing against your heart. And this is a good sort of bridge between personality and health. So we looked last time actually at a little bit of aspects on health and stress in particular. This is going to go a little bit deeper into that, looking particularly at type A personality. So you're going to get a further understanding of what exactly type A is. A lot of people think that they know exactly, but you'll come to see that there's some elements that we don't necessarily think of when we're considering type A personality. And then how are those traits linked to heart disease? So again, I want to see you integrating in the main chapter as well as this Hawk reading, giving examples, citing examples, and citing support for your examples. So if you're pulling examples from the main textbook or the Hawk reading, you should be citing that as you're going. And then I give you the opportunity to give some personal examples too. And I think this is going to be interesting when we see everybody's responses. Just who in your life that might be close to you or that you know of, do you sort of see type A traits in? And if you can't think of anyone, I say, you can always use a movie or a TV character, an actor or actress that you know of. I just want to make sure that you're understanding what this person looks like out in the real world. So that's the discussion. And then this week you also have quiz number 10, which is on chapter 11. And then you have exam 5, which is on chapters 10 and 11. So that finishes off the week. Again, please let me know if you have any questions via email. Otherwise, have a great week.